Maybe see it.
I didn't sleep much that night. You ever have nights like that? I'm not talking about I had too much caffeine all day and I couldn't fall asleep. I'm talking about those times where your mind just doesn't stop. It thinks about the events of the day, the choices made, the things that you have done and wish you maybe didn't do. And it replays over and over and over and over. Those nights. That was me. Every time I tried to close my eyes, I would see his face. Not angry, not really disappointed so much, but just looking at me. With that replay came some words too. Words that I will never forget. Words that just echo in my brain. Words like that went like this. Before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times. No, not me. You got that wrong, Jesus. Remember who you're talking to? I'm Peter. I'm the rock. The other rock, by the way. I got this. I was so sure. I was not going to deny. Not me. Then I did. 3 times. Like he said. And all that rooster. Oh, and then I turned and there he's looking right at me. And then, I broke. It's why when the women, when they came running that day, breathless, and they came to us, they told us that the tomb was empty. I didn't know what to think. I mean, grief does some strange things to you. Sometimes grief still allows that little glimmer of hope that's there that you try to grasp onto. Maybe it's a fake hope, whatever, but it's still a little bit of hope, or maybe it just crushes hope altogether. Grief does some weird things to people. This seemed like nonsense. They said the angels told them he was alive. Alive. I lived the story. My friends, you probably know many of them. You maybe read their books. They wrote down their perspective of what the story was all about. And I would like to read one of them. My buddy Luke, he's a pretty smart guy. He wrote down some words, and I want to read the story from his perspective to you. He said this: on the first day of the week, very early in the morning, the women took the spices they had prepared and went to the tomb. They found the stone rolled away from the tomb, but when they entered, they did not find the body of the Lord Jesus. While they were wondering about this, suddenly 2 men in clothes that gleamed like lightning stood beside them. In their fright, the women bowed down with their faces to the ground. But the men said to them, "Why do you look for the living among the dead? He is not here. He has risen. Remember how he told you while he was still with you in Galilee, the Son of Man must be delivered over to the hands of sinners, be crucified, and on the 3rd day be raised again." Then they remembered his words. When they came back from the tomb, they told all these things to the 11. It's to me and to all the others. It was Mary Magdalene, Joanna, Mary the mother of James, and the others with them who told this to the apostles. But they did not believe the women because their words seemed like nonsense. Peter, however, got up and ran to the tomb. Bending over, he saw the strips of linen lying by themselves, and he went away wondering to himself what had happened. I wanted to believe. I didn't know how. There was something stirring inside of me. Maybe it was desperation. Maybe it was that little glimmer of hope that I was trying to reach out to get, because I was kind of hoping for a second chance. That memory that I had of denying him, I was kind of hoping that if this is true, I could just erase that from my mind, and now I could sleep then, right? So I ran. My buddy Mark writes in his account, he said that he outran me. He was a better runner than me. I'm not much of a runner. My legs were burning. My heart felt like it was just going to pound out of my chest. I was gasping for breath as I was running, but nothing was going to stop me. I was going to get there. I wanted to see with my own eyes. And when I got to the tomb, I looked inside. Empty. Only strips of linen were there. No body, no Jesus. And just for a few moments, everything felt worse. Because now, not only is he gone, but now his body is missing. What if the women were wrong? What if the words that they said was nonsense? What if Jesus never came back to life? What if my hope, even though it was just a little bit of a glimmer of hope, what if that has now been squashed for good? What if running to the tomb that day was a mistake, a waste of time? What if this is all some kind of April Fool's Day joke, a prank that's placed on us? He's not really risen, but we're going to steal his body away to pretend he is. I kept replaying again in my mind what I did when I denied, what he did when he gently looked at me, but with that goring look. Is this really the end? Is it possible that I will never sleep again, at least not like I used to? Am I going to be stuck living a life of replaying that horrible day in my mind? How could I have denied? How could I have doubted? But where is he? I stood there trying to make sense of all of this. A different replay was happening in my mind over and over. Something else that he had said. We didn't understand it at the time. We didn't get what he was trying to tell us. What did it say? Something like this. It said, the Son of Man must be delivered over to the hands of sinners, be crucified, and on the third day be raised again. Raised? Could it be? No. That doesn't happen. Dead men stay dead. We all have been there, burying a loved one. We have all stood there at the grave and felt that crushing weight of that final moments and having to say goodbye. Death takes. Death does not give back. But what if? This time, it did. What if Jesus was telling the truth all along? What if the words that the angels told the women who told us wasn't nonsense, but it was the truth? What if the cross wasn't the end? What if the empty tomb wasn't lost, but it was victory? Does that mean that I still have hope? Everything instantly started changing around me, because if Jesus is alive, then my worst moment of my life, the time that I denied him, isn't the end of my story. If Jesus is alive, then my failure, my sin doesn't define me. If Jesus is alive, that means that even death isn't the end. You see, I ran to that tomb that day with guilt and shame and regret. I ran there as a man who had blown it completely. I walked away different. I walked away wondering, hoping, daring to believe Easter changes everything. And let me tell you this, because I know you. Maybe not personally, but I know your heart. I'm sure that most of you, if not every single one of you, came here today, and you were also carrying around with you this burden on your shoulders. You were carrying around this regret that you had, words that you had said, choices that you had made, decisions and actions that you have actually done. These are moments that replay in your head over and over and over. These are the moments that have robbed you of hours of sleep in your life. These are moments that you wish that you could change. Moments that if you knew you had a second chance, it would be different. Moments that you knew better, but you didn't do better. You know what it's like to have your own rooster crow in your life. And perhaps those are the moments that have caused you to wonder, can anything really change for me? Can I really be forgiven? Can my life really be different? I wondered the same thing until Easter. Because Easter means that Jesus is alive. And if Jesus didn't stay dead and he is alive, that means sin does not have the final say. Not my sin, not your sin. It means that the cross actually paid for your sin. It means that the empty tomb proves that it worked. Easter changes everything. And it's not just about your past. It's about your future. You see, before that morning, to me, death was the end of the road, final. It was unchangeable, unmovable. But when I stood at that empty tomb, I dared to believe something that maybe I had never believed before. That if death couldn't hold Jesus, death can't hold any of us. That means that death isn't the end. That means that the cemetery isn't your final address. It means that those tears that we have shed at a bedside, the goodbyes that we have done at the funeral, the ache of the loss, that's not the end of the chapter. Because Jesus walked out of his grave. One day we're going to walk out of our grave too. Easter changes everything. And maybe the most surprising of all is that Easter changes today. After that day, that morning, not only was I forgiven, but I was sent. You see, the Jesus who I denied 3 times, that Jesus came to me, not to deny me, not to reprimand me, not to replace me, but to find me, to forgive me, to love me, to restore me, to give my life purpose again. And that's what he does. Because Easter isn't about what happens after you die. It's also about what happens this very day. You see, because of Easter, you don't have to live a life that is trapped in your guilt. You don't have to live a life of fear. You don't have to live a life defined by your failures. You get to live a life of freedom. You get to live a life as someone who has been found and forgiven and restored and loved and given a purpose. I went to the tomb that day, expecting to find death. I found the beginning of something new. I didn't understand it at first. I had questions, I had doubts, but there's something that became very clear. Nothing was going to be the same again. Easter changes everything because Jesus lives. And if he is alive, that means your sin is gone. That means that your future is secure. That means that your life has purpose. That means that your story isn't over either. I was a man that ran to that tomb. A man who ran away. A man who denied. A man who thought that it was all over, that I had ruined everything, but that empty tomb told a different story. And if it can change my story, it can change your story. I ran to the tomb that morning filled with regret. I walked away from that tomb completely different. I walked away with wonder, and soon my heart again would be filled with joy. So run to the tomb. See it for yourself. Listen to the words that are said. He is not here. He is risen just as he said. Let those words sink into your heart and take over because it's true. Easter changes everything. Amen.